languages. Geography wasn't the same, history wasn't the same, French wasn't the same, philosophy wasn't the same. The school had to be completely changed. It could be changed because we had learned our lesson. So Sartre became our chief. He didn't want to. He just wrote because he thought it was true.
With the liberation came freedom of the press, and Sartre set about using it to build a new society.
Sartre ne dit pas « il faut s'engager ». Soyez engagés. Il dit « vous êtes engagés même quand vous ne le savez pas ». Vous avez des positions sociales, vous ne la connaissez pas. Vous ne vous en rendez pas compte. Donc, sa morale à lui, c'était « prenez conscience de votre situation ».
He started a magazine called Les Temps Modernes, which he hoped would help to drive social change.
It was formidably important, not only because of the number of people who contributed to it, and because Sartre was the director, though the woman who really got things together and read the articles was Simone de Beauvoir. But here was a review that was going to take everything into account: politics, the life of ordinary people, literature, music, but the accent was on commitment.
Sartre really was born out of 3 weeks. His fame was made during 3 weeks of the month of September 1945, where he really appeared like the writer on the scene. He gave a conference called Existentialism is a Humanism. He published his novel, The Chemin de la Liberté, Roads to Freedom. He gave out the first issue of his monthly magazine, Les Temps Modernes. And then his play, Huis Clos, No Exit, had been, performed for many months then.
Sartre's newfound status as France's most prominent writer was held by his very accessible lifestyle in and around the cafes and bars of Saint-Germain-des-Prés. Here was a new kind of very public intellectual, who even seemed to write his books in between sipping cups of coffee and chatting to friends.
Au Flore, il y avait, elle existe toujours, une salle au premier étage. Maintenant, il y a des gens qui viennent là tranquillement. Mais enfin, ils viennent plutôt pour lire. Si vous veniez un matin à 10h, vous aperceviez Sartre, Le Castor, Bost, Scipion, qui chacun était à une table et écrivait, grattait. De temps en temps parlaient entre eux, bien sûr, mais c'était une salle d'études comme de classe.
The people around them, they all lived in the same hotel. It was like living in family, near one to the other, and not having, not being in possession of things.
He owned nothing. No flat, no car. He even threw away all his books one day.
He was interviewed by people in cafes and so on. People would ask him, but what is existentialism? And he would say, existentialism? I do not know what that is. My philosophy is a philosophy of existence, and it comes from a very complicated German philosophy, which is phenomenology. But I'm not going to explain to you right now, he said. So one of the things is that, the kind of people press started to pull some elements from his very thick and dense works into the popular press by giving, bits here and bits there. So basically, they started to build a whole thing out of existentialism.
Sartre himself didn't exactly discourage the kind of fashionable image that was growing up around him. He wrote lyrics for the singer Juliette Gréco, and was often seen in the company of other glamorous women in a way that attracted media attention.
I asked him one day, but if you weren't a teacher and a philosopher, what would you like? What would you have been? I said, a chanteur de charme.
But as well as being fascinated by Sartre's lifestyle, the media was also scandalized by his atheist ideas. The mainstream press attacked him continuously, accusing him of moral corruption and of spreading hopelessness among the young.
Sartre tries to rebuild the idea of freedom taken out of the Christian culture, and to get rid of the power of God on human life. And so he comes to the conclusion that if God exists, man is not free, and if man is free, God does not exist.
I am my liberty. You had scarcely created me when I stopped belonging to you. Nature jumped backwards. I was ageless and felt quite alone in the middle of your well-meaning world, like a man who's lost his shadow. There was nothing left in heaven, neither good nor evil, nor anyone to give me orders. For I am a man, and each man must find his own way. You can neither punish me nor reprimand me, and that's why I make you afraid.
He says there is no God. Well, more than half the world is against him. That's how he's bad. That's how he's nasty. That's why he shouldn't be read. That's why he should be burnt. Then he says liberty is for everybody. Everybody's got right to liberty, got right to go everywhere, say everything, think everything, do everything. And they condemn him as they condemn Socrates. He didn't like being famous. It stopped him in what he wanted to do. When he was in his bureau with his paper, then it was all right. He gave rendezvous sometimes to people, but when he was stopped in the street for autographs or somebody who said hello, he hated that.
Forced to retreat from the cafes of the left bank by the attentions of the press, Sartre moved to live with his mother in the Rue Bonaparte. They lived quietly, often playing piano duets together, and Sartre was free to write, away from the prying eyes of the world.
Sartre, from childhood onward, was someone who had suffered when he couldn't be in control of the image that other people formed of him. This, for him, was hell. This was hellish. This was acutely worrying. The discomfort he felt whenever he thought about what other people were thinking when they were looking at him is fundamental to his existence and to all his writing.
Sartre tells this story about someone, I think it's in a hotel corridor, with their eye to a keyhole, completely absorbed in what's going on in the bedroom behind. And then they hear a step on the stairs behind them, and they suddenly become aware that they are a person looking at a bedroom scene behind a closed door, whereas before they were just looking at the scene.
And he's instantly transformed from being something that's just concentrated on trying to hear to being a human performing a shameful act. And he feels shame. And the very existence of shame proves that we are always under the eyes of other people. If we can even feel shame, this means we know that other people are looking at us, thinking about us.
We start thinking of ourselves as though we were an object, and so we construct an idea of ourselves as an item in someone else's world, and that's the point at which something like a self comes into being. The implication of this is that there is no way that people can, in the end, be comfortable with each other. It is always going to be impossible to think of yourself simultaneously as someone who is going around the world acting in it and being an agent and also to think of yourself